Captain's Log Supplemental. Well, the purge is finally over. Now just comes the numerous hours and maybe even sometimes days of counseling that comes afterwards. We do it every couple of years. We throw a party and we invite every single person from engineering down. We do all of their favorite things in the party, drinks, mind puzzles, all the lame stuff that engineering people like to do. And then while they're at that party, I have security go and throw away their boxes of extra cables. It's usually about halfway through the party when they finally realize they're locked in and not allowed to go back down to engineering. And, well, that's when the screaming starts, and sometimes we have to stun some of them. Someone had a cable from a Constitution class starship. Like, what are we doing here? Ay. Anyways, we got some replicator ration energy out of that, so should be good for a while now. He's the I'm built for comfort, not for speed guy from Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah, there was like I never made that connection in your defense before, but then like when you said that, and then when I listened to that clip, there is like a line you say that is very Carl Weiser.
Wait, in that clip?
Yes.
Hold on.
Like it sounded very similar.
Oh man, I'm so. It hurts.
I'm telling you, we need to do like a read mean comments like potpourri next week.
Reading mean tweets is it's a good segment right there.
Oh god damn it. Yeah, it's because I was laughing at the same time.
Yes.
Fuck. Oh man.
Chris is loving this so much.
It's funny too because it's funny too because Mariah constantly, because I'm like, I don't like my voice. I fucking hate my voice. Mariah's like, your voice is fine. The internet has spoken, honey.
Yeah.
No,
I know.
it's just one asshole on the internet.
No,
it's been two so far.
It's two today.
And someone said just be quiet, and that's probably also about my voice.
I mean, probably.
And Chris, that's like 4 people right there.
Your voice never bothered me. I mean, I
like
a
Carl
womanly and
Weiser.
special voice.
I can't tell you how many times I've been on phone with like customer service somewhere, and they're like, "Yeah, can I speak?" Like it's like, "Da ma'am, ma'am." It's like, "Okay, can I have your name?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Matthew." And there's this pause.
Is Daddy home?
No.
And then 8 or 9 times out of 10, they then assume that this is the one time they've ever heard of a woman named Matthew.
That is the logical conclusion.
I've literally been called Miss Matthew.
Oh man.
And it's like, and there comes a point where it's like, well, I might as well just take it. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't, the customer service rep of this like ice cream shop I needed to call in order to order something is not like worth my time to correct on my gender,
Well, what I don't understand though is like your voice sounds. It's not gravelly. Like, what's the right word?
Raspy.
Like,
raspy.
yeah, sort of raspy. It doesn't sound feminine.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way either. Raspy, yes. But
shitty, absolutely. Feminine, no. Like it made me mad, not horny.
Oh my god.
All right, is everybody ready to get some fucking marks?
Yeah.
Goddamn fucking roast of my poor voice here. All right, I'll go. Then Chris, then Mariah. Mark. That hurt my throat.
Jesus Christ.
I killed Chris.
Someone squeezing your balls? Let go of it. Are they squeezing you? Go back to your room, kids.
Children are worried about his well-being.
Daddy,
Oh,
What is that?
All right. Matthew, listen. You need to include that after the goodbye at the end of the podcast as an outtake.
I will try.
Oh man.
Oh, fucking hell. We were all recording, right?
Yeah, we were recording all that.
Oh yeah, that's all recorded.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
My
You worried
throat
your
hurts.
family.
I can't fucking see.
We're all crying. We're all currently crying.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Shout out to that guy who called me Carl Weezer.
Very good. Oh man.
Yeah, we got to do a mean tweets. That's got to be.
Yeah.
That's gotta be.
I like how all the mean tweets are going to be about me.
No.
Well, honey.
No. I mean,
No.
no.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. I don't even. We were marking, weren't we?
Just another person.
Yeah,
I don't
it's your
care.
turn.
Is it my turn? Mark. Welcome back, everybody, to Captain's Log Supplemental. As always, I'm Chris. I'm joined by co-hosts Rob
Hello.
and Stanford
Hi.
and producer Mariah.
Hi there.
All right, so we were talking about just off mic. We were talking about Pokemon and their messed up backstories and stuff, and it reminded me of some TikToks I had seen where it's basically this like weightlifter guy he's testing the am I strong as Ash Ketchum, and he takes various like freeze frames of Ash like holding a Pokemon and then checks the weight of that Pokemon to see how much it actually weighs.
Yeah, Squirtle is like a 200 or 300 pound Pokemon. This 10-year-old's just benching him. Like,
Yeah. So I always thought that was funny.
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So what's this podcast?
Yeah, so I was clearing my throat. We are a Star Trek rewatch podcast. We are going through in chronological order every episode of Star Trek, and we are still working through our way through Enterprise. And it's going. We're 10 episodes into the third season at this point. It's chugging right along.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is by far the best season so far, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's not like a high bar.
Fair. Very fair.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so we got back from Kentucky, right? We were in Kentucky all last week. And then, as I understand it, Christopher, you were in Mexico?
Yes, yeah, I was in Riviera Maya.
Okay, so let me just compare our vacations. Okay, so like was it pretty warm? Was it hot?
It was hot. Well,
Yeah.
as far as it could have been, it was actually not terrible. It was like high 80s most of the time, which,
Okay. So, but the weather
Okay.
was generally cooperative, though, right?
Yeah, it wasn't bad
Okay,
at all.
cool.
You have a-
So that's
You have a
the
nice sea
same.
breeze.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the same between our vacations. You get like good food, good drink.
Yeah, it was a resort, so it was, all drinks included, meals included. So, ate a lot. Drank not as much as I was expecting, but that's because I was
Sure.
like sick for 2 of those days. But
Sure. Did you like have like some pretty fun activities?
yeah, I went to the beach,
Yeah.
pool, all sorts
Cool.
of stuff.
Made friends with an iguana.
Oh yeah. Some fun
iguanas
wildlife. Fun wildlife.
Everywhere, various types of mammals. Where the big old sea turtle came up on the beach one night. It was awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, we saw like 5 little foxes and like some other animals. I heard a lot of birds. It's cool. Hey, did any children get thrown out of any windows?
I not to my knowledge. Not to my
okay.
knowledge.
Well, then our vacation wins.
Do
Whose
we
child?
know? Do we know?
Guess.
Do we know if your child was actually thrown or did he just
No,
fall?
what happened was Liam defenestrated himself by like falling backward as he
How
was like, because
long have you been waiting to say defenestrated?
it got said like seconds after it happened. So like he fucking falls out of this window. Now it's a 1st-story window in a house. He fell like 3 or 4 feet onto some grass. He's fine. But like he was sitting in the window and one of the other kids like kind of like rushed at him in a playful way and he like backed up and like didn't know that you couldn't just lean all of your body weight against a fucking screen. So the screen just popped and he just fell out of the house. And he was very, very startled by like, well, I was in the house and now I'm out of the house.
Yeah, that's fun. It's a good experience. I mean, at least you said it was first floor, right? So
yeah, he's fine. He's physically fine. It was just quite the startling experience. I have another question for you though, Chris. Do y'all have it was not there when I was a kid, but do y'all have Ale 8-1 in Missouri?
Ale 8-1. What is that?
It is
Dude,
a ginger
I don't think
ale.
so.
No, I've never seen it.
All of the ads that I saw for it while we were in Kentucky just kept saying like the pride of bluegrass or something like that. Like, I think it's just a Kentucky drink.
It comes from Kentucky. It's phenomenal. I'm gonna order you some.
I love ginger ale, so yes, do that.
I'm gonna order you. I'm getting a sampler pack for us. They have other flavors as well. I'm gonna get you a sampler pack too.
Which that's new.
So is it like a
yes? The
soda?
other flavors are like a new. What'd you say?
It's a soda.
Okay, so
it's a very mild ginger ale flavor, and it's caffeinated.
It's caffeinated.
What?
Not
Amazing.
like, oh my god, caffeinated. Like, it's not an energy drink, but it has a little bit of caffeine in it.
And it's called Ale 8-1 because it's a late one.
They have the whole story on the bottle, so. But it is, I'm not surprised it's the pride of Kentucky because it is the best thing to come out of that state.
Wait, isn't your wife from there?
Yeah.
Honey, are you better than Ale 8-1?
Yes.
Okay. Well, agree to disagree. I know.
Rob loves me.
So, speaking of other like fun, weird, colloquial drinks, I don't know what you would call that, local drinks. One thing I was asking everybody on the trip, Chris, have you ever heard of Iron Brew?
Yes.
Okay. See, someone else knows what it is.
I don't even remember when you told me last.
That's the like the national drink of Scotland. Like it's a soda like sports drink mix. It tastes like
sounds
bubble
terrible.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's real weird. It was okay. My sister really liked it.
I give Rob an Ale 8-1, and he's like, oh, it tastes like potpourri. And I'm like, oh, geez, man, I'm sorry. He's like, no, I like it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
That brings me back to when my mom would make potpourri and put it out.
Yeah, it's like, if someone told me something tastes like potpourri, that's not a compliment. Like,
it tastes the way that potpourri like smells. Like it's just very effervescent.
It doesn't taste the way potpourri tastes, Rob, because apparently you would know.
I don't know the way that it tastes. So, okay. I think that it's around the same. I was watching a video by Hank Green, and he brought up this weird phenomenon where, like, if you've ever felt something, you know what that would feel like to put on your tongue.
Yeah.
So, like, he was talking about how, like, you essentially know what it's like to have a toilet bowl brush on your tongue.
Yep.
Even though you've never done it before.
Sounds
you just
terrible.
know what it. Yeah, exactly.
Yep,
no
never
one would
done
like
it
that.
before.
But you, like, instinctively know what that would feel like.
Texture-wise, not taste-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's taste for me.
Oh, okay. Well, fucking synesthesia weirdo.
All right. Well, as a reminder, please subscribe, like, download, comment.
Go be mean on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. We're on all the podcasts and YouTube. Plenty of mean comments out there. When we get enough, we'll do a segment of mean tweets. So.
Of everyone is mean to Stanford. It's all right, I can take it.
Well, getting into it. So this episode is episode 10 of season 3, Similitude.
Can I preface?
You may preface.
Okay, here's my preface. I'm starting to think that all of these people who have these lists of their very favorite Enterprise episodes are like listing them based on what they sound like on paper and not like the actual episode.
Interesting.
Because this is, again, one of those episodes that like everyone lauds as like one of the best episodes of Enterprise, maybe even of Star Trek. And I'm like, on paper, I guess I don't disagree, but I do not believe the execution lives up to that accolade. And that is the same thing I had with Cogenitor, same thing I had with First Flight, same thing I had with Carbon Creek. Like,
So
I think everyone's just like, yeah, the blurb sounds great.
This was a weird episode because I felt like it started off very weakly, but then wound up good at the end.
I tend to agree with you, but I think we'll get more into this at the end of our summary here.
Yeah.
All right. So we start with a little cold open at a funeral. We're slowly panning from kind of bridge crew member to bridge crew member, saying, all right, who's dead here?
A bunch of sad extras.
Yeah, and until we finally settle in on the casket, which has Trip in it.
I hate this cold open so much. They could have just started with, like, the Act 1 stuff. This cold open just existed so that they could put commercials for the show with Trip being dead. Like, that was the whole purpose of this fucking cold open.
Yeah, it
probably.
was a, I don't want to say like kitschy is not the right word, but it was very
It's false stakes. It's stupid.
Yeah.
This is like the early 2000s version of clickbait.
Yes, for sure. It was show clickbait, for sure. So, after some Faith of the Heart, we come back to a little 2 weeks earlier label at the bottom of the screen.
My note for the Faith of the Heart is, I got spurs.
So Trip, here's one of those scenes where we get to experience someone's very
Jesus
specific
Christ.
fetish with Trip and T'Pol 69ing with their feet.
Chris, I said, does Vulcan feet therapy need to be 69? Like, that's my exact note.
So they're laying there giving each other foot massages, basically, or Vulcan neuropressure.
I couldn't also help but notice that they framed the shot so that you would get to see T'Pol's bum instead of Trip's.
Well,
yeah, but you did get to see Trip's like pecs and stuff, so they were also framing his best features.
I had to double check to see if Tarantino directed this one, but he did not. So
No,
Yeah,
did you
there
see
was-
who it was?
A lot
no,
of feet.
I did not.
It's Livingston, right?
No, LeVar Burton.
God damn it, LeVar Burton. Son of a bitch.
So after the initial, which has been a common theme from episode to episode, the last 5 or 6 or so, where you the Vulcan neuropressure scene between Trip and T'Pol. After that, I missed it here. What were they? They were testing something, but I think they said at the end of the massage
Wait, well, hold on.
Wait.
Hold on.
You're skipping over the best line of the entire episode here.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Rob.
it was when Trip was commenting how, like, T'Pol said that this was going to be difficult.
Yeah, and
she returns with, "We haven't gotten to the more challenging postures."
and then Trip wears her like a hat.
Yeah, and then Trip looks directly up her shirt at her tits. Yeah. I just want to point out that like this could have not been horny and it would have been the same plot point. Like, it could have just been like, I don't know, like they needed to do an activity together for whatever reason, even if you want to call it like a de-stress thing. Maybe they learned that dumb Vulcan like toothpick game or whatever. Like, fine. Like, they didn't have to get weird horny with it, and it still could have been somewhat intimate. They develop a relationship. All of that could have happened over like a weekly game of checkers or whatever.
But, but it's Enterprise,
or
so
the fucking movies. Like,
to be
they
horny.
could have done the whole thing about the movies, like Trip trying to get T'Pol to really appreciate like a Earth cinema. So he like, he'd bring a movie over to her, quarters or whatever, and they're completely dressed or whatever. Like,
I'm not necessarily opposed to like a romantic storyline, but the problem with this one is that it puts them in erotic scenes when there is no romance supposedly going on.
Right,
So,
right,
like,
and that's my
I
point. You
think-
can be intimate without being sexual. You know?
Yeah. Well, like, I think this goes back to me. Do you remember in like one of the first episodes I pointed out that this felt like somebody took Star Trek and then got somebody who wrote like a really horny anime to write the screenplay for it?
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Huge Columbus.
Anyway, so what were they testing before we got to the warp thing? Like
Well, they're testing a compression of some sort of matter. Something or other.
not important, clearly. So anyway, after the massage scene, we cut to the bridge and they're doing some testing. They have to go to warp 4.9 to do this testing.
So they're so he's got a new way to compress the, like, I think it's supposed to be the antimatter stream, although I'm not sure they said that. But, like, he's got a little diagram of it going on in his thing, and he found a new way to compress it. So basically, because you know how, like, so you know how when you're in, like, an 89 junker, and, like, when you hit 60 miles an hour, like, the fucker just starts rattling? That's what the Enterprise does at, like, 4.8-ish.
Yeah,
well he figured out that, like, if you compress the stream better, it stops the rattling.
Yeah. So they, the problem after that, when they compressed it and the fluctuations are under control, is, you know, the intake manifolds get flooded, and that just ruins everything.
Man, those intake manifolds. Yeah. Should they put a hole at the bottom of the intake manifolds? They seem to flood a lot.
They do, yeah. So Trip has to quickly, as things are exploding in engineering, Trip has to go clamber on top of the warp core and manually disable it.
This is where I'm like, I feel like shutting down dangerous engines should be a little easier.
Yeah. Maybe some type of fail-safe in place. Anyway, it's fine. So after
Right. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Chris.
No, just say after he manually disables and shuts down the warp engine, he gets caught in an explosion.
Boom! Perfect cold open. Right there. There's your cold open.
This was a really cool practical effect, too.
Yeah, it was fine.
Nice job with it.
It was a fine little sequence. They're testing something. Something goes wrong. He has to shut down the engine in an emergency. A massive explosion happens, and he's caught in it. Jangly faith of the heart. There's your cold open. This nonsense with the fucking funeral was stupid.
Yeah. So Enterprise drops out of warp, but into some weird polaric field thing.
Do fucking nucleonic particles, man.
So in the next scene we hear from T'Pol. She says there's lots of damage. It's going to take weeks to repair. And it's, you know, she says Trip's got to get on this, man. And Archer says, well, Trip's in a coma. He's had extensive neural damage and may not even survive.
I don't know what direction Jolene Blalock was given in most of these scenes, but she is way emotional throughout this whole episode, starting with this scene. Like, she's visibly distraught. And, like, it would be one thing if that was something that, like, had kind of been, like, hinted to or, like, kind of alluded to in previous episodes or whatever, but she is still a Vulcan with, like, absolute control of her emotions. And yet for most of this episode, she looks like she's barely keeping it together. And I don't think that makes any sense for her character.
Yeah, I didn't quite get that strong of a sense from it, from my watch of it.
It could also have been foreshadowing for a scene that happens later on in this episode.
Sure.
Maybe.
So in sickbay, Phlox shows Archer some larvae thing and describes how, you just got to inject some genes into it, and a clone will grow of that, the genes from the genes you injected. However, it only has a 15-day lifespan. It's an entire life-death cycle in 15 days.
I was like, Jesus, what a useful thing to have. Like,
it really is.
For almost anything.
Why do they keep calling this thing a symbiote, though?
Yeah.
It's not really symbiotic.
Nope. I heard larvae. I didn't actually hear symbiote.
Was it symbiote?
Yeah, that's why they call him Sim.
I think it was symbiont. Isn't that a different word? But I don't know.
I don't know.
I like how Phlox is like, I'm obligated to inform you of all the available options, and I'm like, especially the unethical ones.
So yeah, he suggests using this thing to grow a Trip clone to get the needed neural tissue that real Trip requires to repair his noodle, his brain noodle, not the other noodle that, as far as I know, was fine.
They mention the fact that there is an ethical issue here.
They do, yeah.
And then and there is a level of like because Archer says like we've got to complete this mission. So it's like, okay, so to save humanity, you're going to lose your humanity. Like, is the kind of like the thing that they're trying to do with the writing.
Sure.
Then they take that ethical discussion and they put it on a shelf. We're going to talk about it later, but we've got a bunch of episode to get through before we talk about it ever again.
Yeah, like I said, they start off weak and then finish strong later.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't actually get a strict decision in the med bay. It just kind of happens afterward.
No, it's LeVar Burton. We hear about shit later.
Yeah. So in the captain's room, T'Pol shows Archer the substance that's accumulating on the hull, It's highly magnetic. We get a little cup sucking to it as she sets it down on his desk there. I thought that was fun.
But
you know, the
Chris
longer
is all about them practical effects.
yeah, I love a good practical effect, man. It's fun when it's not CG. And it looks good. I mean, if it looks bad, then no. But good-looking practical effects are an art unto their own. But yeah, so the more of this substance that builds up on the hull, obviously it's having a negative impact on the ship. You can only stay in there for so long.
I have a question. T'Pol says that it's ferric in nature. Like, this is just rust.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just call it rust?
Well, it even looks like rust, like when they do like the outside the ship establishing shots.
It's
like
not rust because it's not oxidized. It's just like it's nucleonic particles. Rob, shut up.
So at this point, we do find out that Archer approved the procedure for the clone. Archer says he understands the ethical complexity of the matter, but
See, the nice thing is in these shows, what you can do is instead of actually talking about the ethical complexity, you can just say the character understands it and move on.
It doesn't matter.
Like
the mission takes precedence, and the mission needs Trip. There's no other engineers that can be used, just Trip.
Archer's aware of the ethical implications. He just doesn't care about
I
it.
want Archer to tell me to my face what he thinks the ethical conundrum is. Because based on a discussion that happens later, I'm not sure he actually does.
He was very specific in that conversation on his feelings.
It's, do I want to lose my friend or do I want to help my friend?
So we get a quick larvae injecting scene. He just stabs the little rubber larvae thing with a little injector, and boop, we grow a little Trip.
Dude, this is the thickest needle he could have possibly used too.
He's got to inject all of Trip's manly DNA. Shit's huge.
It was very wet too. Squirted when he punched the thing into it.
Yeah,
it did. We get a good cut of the outside of the ship.
Yeah, we get a cut to the outside of the ship.
With all the rust, and it looks kind of cool when it's all rusty.
Yeah, it's fun. Yep, and then we cut in and we get, a wee little baby Trip.
This is where I wrote, I swear to fuck, if one of the women are required to take care of it, I'm out.
No, Phlox is a good dad.
Yep.
Is he? He apparently requires the thing to call him Dr. Phlox.
Daddy Phlox. We get a little nice, quick grow up montage. Baby Trip, crawling around. Phlox is talking about how they're going to use his poop for fertilizer. And
standard how do parrots do it joke. Oh my god.
They talk about naming him, and Phlox comes up with the name Sim, which I guess, as Rob stated, is for symbiont or something. But
a mimetic symbiont. I think that's what they called it. A mimetic symbiont.
Yeah. So the baby's grown up fast. As was discussed earlier, he only gets 15 days to live, so he's going to... How much food do you think he's eating that entire time?
So much food.
So much energy required for all that growing.
Yeah, that's why that baby was shitting so much. Shit.
Yeah. Also, I want to note here, we get several, different children playing young Trips.
Doing Trip accent.
Terrible accent. It is the funniest thing watching. What's funny is this isn't even only the first time this has happened in the series where we've had kids doing Trip's accent. But Sim is asking questions and discovering he isn't normal at this point.
Well, and vis-a-vis the accent, the important thing here is that apparently the symbiont is gaining Trip's memories.
Right. Yes, he is, but slowly. He doesn't get all of them all at once. As he grows older, his memories return to him from that age.
Phlox says there are some species that keep their cultural knowledge in their DNA. Maybe humans do something similar. This could be a significant discovery. The fact that we keep every memory in our DNA could be a significant discovery? What the fuck are you talking about? That rewrites several different biological fields right there.
We wouldn't have to go to school anymore.
It must be incredibly disorienting too.
You just CRISPR in a fucking piano course and you could go play a concert.
Just all of a sudden you have a new memory that you didn't have yesterday, but you didn't actually experience. It'd be incredibly disorienting.
You know what? It is disorienting because you know how in a dream you just know shit that hasn't actually happened and you're like, well, I guess I am the president of the United States. Crazy. And then you just move on.
Yeah.
This is like one of the sadder parts of the episode too, because this poor little kid is like talking about like, where are my parents? Like, are they back on Earth? And Phlox is just like, yeah, baby.
Yeah, he doesn't actually say it. Yeah, because Archer is taking him, to his quarters for some reason to show him all this cool shit.
It's the most awkward moment ever because Archer is no surprise a terrible dad.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm allowed to say that, everyone. I'm a dad.
So he's like, hey, yeah, that's sad, but hey, look, remote control shuttle thing. Why don't we go play with this in engineering?
I like how the kid's like piloting this shuttle around and doesn't even look up when he's like, where's my mom and dad? And then like, dude, you want to try a little bit there, kid?
Yeah, so after Sim crashes the shuttle, Archer takes him to sickbay and shows him Trip's comatose body because he's asking questions, and Archer decides now is the time that he needs to be told what's going on.
This is where the child shouts, Dr. Phlox says we're not allowed to go in there. It's like, did Phlox require him to call him by his like professional title? Like, what kind of terrible, is that how he treats all of his children, do you think? Like all of his...
He immediately understands what exactly is happening. It's like, oh, that's actual Trip. I'm a fake. What am I, some type of clone? I'm like, man, you guessed it. Good job, kid. Archer said nothing. He just opened the curtains.
The worst part about this whole situation is this kid has been sleeping in the room with his like comatose clone for at least 2 days at this point, and Phlox is like, don't pull that curtain back.
And call me doctor.
Call me doctor.
Call me doctor.
Dr. Daddy.
I'm the only parent you know, but you will call me
Daddy.
Dr. Extavius Phlox. I don't know what his first name is.
Dr. Father.
Dr. Father. Father MD. All right. So Sims says he feels older than 4 days old because Archer tells him he's only 4 days old. Archer explains they need to go harvesting his stuff pretty soon. Kid takes it real well. He's like, oh, well, that's crazy. Okay,
yeah.
I'm hungry. Let's go eat.
Because, no, I don't know if you know this, he's being groomed.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what's happening here.
I mean,
You're not wrong.
I mean.
Yeah. It's creepy when we put it in those terms, huh?
Yeah.
This fucking show, man.
Well, okay. So, I mean, yeah, that's obviously that's part of what the episode is trying to, I think, portray, as well, is which I also think is why we spent so much time as a child.
Trying to do so. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So pretty soon we get told Teenage Trip. Teenage Trip gets one scene where
Teenage Trip is fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
he's the only kid actor that kind of gets the accent okay.
Yeah. He's into engineering. He's been assigned to help out. Immediately starts to flirt with T'Pol.
He's like, I like how pretty you are. Like, it's like he's the bluntest. I don't remember exactly what he said. Oh, he was basically like, I can't tell if I think you're hot or if Trip thought you were hot, but one part of us is definitely thinking you're hot as shit right now.
Oh, that wasn't Teenage Trip. That was Adult Trip.
Yeah, that was Adult Trip. He just talks about he just invites her to like go like see like a movie or something like that. And he's like, oh no, it's because I'm different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He was just pounding it. He's like an incel. He's like, ladies never go for the good guys. This is ridiculous.
You find out about the adolescent crush later. It's like there's some joke. It was like, no, the adolescent crush was 2 days ago.
2 days ago. That was a good joke.
By the way, T'Pol
a good joke.
Doesn't deny that. She just kind of deflects the question.
Well, she's doing her best.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So one thing I had a note on here was that while in the medbay scene, we find out he's told he's only 4 days old. But they also don't tell him that he's only living for 15 days. I guess he knows that, though. Somebody told him at that point because, like, he says something about how I'm not going to be around when the mission's over or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that was a missed opportunity. I think that could have been a scene in and of itself. I don't know if maybe...
you mean like a good scene where we actually get to watch what happens rather than just watching what happens later?
There's some of the scenes where we watch what happens later. But yeah, I thought that was a missed opportunity there. We quickly find out that Enterprise only has 4 days to make it out of this polaric field, or the ship will be crippled from the buildup of rust/gunk/whatever it is. At this point, we are to adult Trip again, so we have the actor back. He says he all of a sudden realized key lime pie is his favorite as he's talking to Reed in the mess hall.
Still bros.
Yep, still bros. He suggests redirecting phase cannons to knock some of the chunks off the ship so they can send out some shuttle pods to do some towing to get him out of the polaric field.
Okay, listen. They made a horrible tease here and promised us grapplers. And we were not delivered the actual grapplers, and I am bitter about it.
There was grapplers. They just came out
There
of
were
the
grapplers,
pods.
although they are plot hole producing grapplers that we will talk about later when we get to that scene. But my question is, why the grapplers? Can't they just clamp the shuttles onto the fucking ship? Like, I don't know if y'all are familiar with, like, the way that slack to taut cable tension forces work, but, like, if at all possible, you don't want to put a lot of force through a flexible cable because, like, it'll fucking snap.
Right.
Like, you want something rigid. The grappler idea is stupid. Like, you have shuttle pods with, like, docking clamps. Use those.
No, that's fine. So Trip visits T'Pol's quarters to go over his suggestion. She is on board with it and has already recommended it to the captain. At this point, so this is where Sim explains that Trip has been very much enjoying his sessions with T'Pol, not just because of the sleep benefits, but thinks he has some feelings for her that he's inherited. Or maybe not. He can't tell if it's his feelings or Trip's feelings.
So, and that brief moment of insight where it's like he's having trouble deciding whether or not he's having an emotional response because of memories of Trip or like his own memories that he's developed over the last few days. That brief moment is like, oh, someone almost got it. Someone almost figured out where the interesting part of this story was, but this is the only time it comes out.
I wish this had been like a 3-episode arc.
A 3-episode arc would have been fine, but my point is that, like, this was the focus that they needed to have. They needed to talk about the conflict inside this character, but they don't, except for this one little scene. So, like, I don't know. Fuck.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think you're right. I think there was more opportunity to do that, and they didn't do it enough. I think the ending of the episode, they definitely did it as well, though.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So, at that point, T'Pol says she is, she's like, no, I'm not uncomfortable, while she clearly looks very uncomfortable.
Sure does.
Yeah. So, Trip soon talks to the captain and says he wants to fly one of the shuttle pods. Archer's like, no, stupid. We're not doing that. For reasons. Says he needs to make sure the plan works, and also you don't want his organ bag to die.
Which, like, man, it's, again, these fucking missed opportunities. Because, like, this was a very poignant remark to make, but it didn't get made properly. And Archer was being cagey about it in a weird way. Like, Archer's all about being honest with this dude until he actually needs to be honest, and then he's not. But then the writers aren't, like, brave enough to actually confront that, you know?
I don't know. I think they confronted it in the scene where he says, I'm gonna kill you to finish our mission.
Yeah.
Well, that's later, and we'll get to that in a second too.
All right.
Because actually, I have a different remark about the writers in that particular scene.
All right. So, and now it's time to mount our escape mission. We get a little CG scene of the phase cannons knocking the gunk off the shuttle pod bays, and they launch the pods. We don't actually see the grapplers deployed, although they are, they're just like, they're deployed, and we're tugging on the ship.
Well, you see them connect to the hull of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they apparently are fired from the shuttles, because, fun fact, everybody, the shuttles apparently have their own grapplers.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many problems from the past episodes that would have solved, but it's at least a dozen, I'm pretty sure.
No, it's fine.
Like, at the very least, they could have solved the problem in the one episode where, like, it falls through the ice. Like, just go
nose
throw
down.
it up on the surface. Yeah, just go throw it up on the surface and then tow hitch your way out of there.
Yep. So after some dramatic music cues and some manufactured tension, after initially no movement happening from the towing, they eventually increase the power, and it's enough to get the Enterprise moving.
Yeah, it's like in Fast and Furious where like you don't move and then you just go faster and then you move.
Yeah. I was not gonna comment about the obvious weird physics happening here.
Yeah.
I like how they're pulling at full force, and she's like, "There's zero forward momentum." I'm like, that's literally impossible.
That's literally not possible.
That's literally not a possible statement.
Yeah.
No. The Rust was moving in an equal but opposite direction.
And maybe it was like because it was magnetic. I don't know. Maybe the cloud was pulling them back, but they didn't say that. Like,
silly physics aside, the Enterprise is now moving. In sick bay, we find out all of a sudden from Phlox that Sim won't survive the transplant surgery. So, not only does he not get 15 days, or only gets 50 days, he actually only gets like 8 days. Because, they were basing their findings on some other alien's biology.
And here's where someone thought they were clever. But the problem is that they have now introduced a second completely separate moral conundrum here.
Yeah.
That is unrelated to the first.
Yeah.
Because the second conundrum is, do you kill someone to save someone else?
Right.
That's the second conundrum.
I was going to say, here's where we have our true Tuvixian conundrum.
I also mentioned Tuvix later.
Yeah. We have, it turns from what are the moral applications or ethic implications of cloning somebody for their parts to what are the moral implications of murdering somebody for their parts.
Just because they're not going to live as long.
Right.
Yeah, and now we've arrived at Archer's supervillain origin story.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. So Sim says, after some hemming and hawing there in that scene about from Archer, you told me he was gonna be fine. I didn't really want to kill him, just a little bit, but
I just wanted to watch him die. There's a difference.
Yeah. So we get another scene where Sim says he did some research, and I guess there was some alien group where these things come from that came up with an enzyme that might stop his rapid aging process. Phlox says he didn't share it because there's little empirical evidence about it. There's like, well, there might be a thing that would, make it so he would stop aging and he'd have a full lifespan. And then they never talk about it again after this scene.
I have a question. I'm going to need someone to explain how Phlox's ethics work. Because, he's like, well, it would be a little unethical to make this clone, but I'm just giving you all the options. But then when he takes that option, he doesn't actually inform him about all of the information involving this fucking clone, because he's like, well, I just won't tell him that part. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Look, Phlox is consistent in his inconsistent ethics, okay? This has been demonstrated across many episodes. He can cure diseases instantly. Is he going to give it to you? I don't know. We'll see. So after that, Sim kind of starts to brood a little bit. We get some brooding scenes about his obviously shitty situation, and understandably, he is not happy about it.
Well, and I think in the Archer scene too, I think this is where Sim says something to the effect of what are you going to do? Hold a gun to my head and force me onto the table? And then Archer says something, and this is paraphrasing, if you have Trip's memories, I won't do that. And then the sentence continues, but I can't let you say no to this, or something of that nature. It's like, then you are doing that, asshole. Yeah. What the fuck are you talking about? Which is where I was like, what the fuck is the writing on this show trying to do? It's trying to save Archer's ass, his reputation, while also letting him be the bad guy.
If you really have Trip's memories, I hope you won't make me do that. I'm like, that's some abuser shit right there. Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. No, I think he said something like, if you have all of Trip's memories, then you already know my answer. And I thought they were alluding to the idea that, they understand that Archer's here on a mission and he's going to do anything he has to do to accomplish it. Right. Meaning that, he was going to murder, Sim Trip to save real Trip, regardless, one way or the other.
Which, by the way, in this scene, Archer is just angry, which is a weird tone for this scene and what he's saying.
Yeah.
For trying to convince someone to kill themselves, yeah, that's a pretty weird tone.
Yeah, like it's like why? Like I could understand like quiet, kind of like quiet brooding. So you're like come off serious and like
Or short even.
Or
like
short,
I
yeah,
can see like kind of clipped.
even not being empathetic, just like but like angry with Sim about the situation.
Angry with
seems
Sim
weird.
for Sim's feelings and decisions on the
About
matter.
not wanting to die. Yeah, it's
About not wanting to die.
yeah.
How dare you put me in this situation?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You're right. It's classic gaslighting.
Yeah. It was a weird scene. So we kind of cut to see where Sim's getting in his oh wait, no, hold on, I skipped something.
Well, he goes to engineering.
Yeah. So apparently Sim has agreed to the operation after Archer is a supervillain.
After Archer browbeats him into it.
Yeah. He has the engineering and tells T'Pol, says he wants to stay busy and help out before his operation. And T'Pol's like, you want to spend your last hours doing work in engineering? She's like, okay, jeez.
Which, like, that's weirdly judgy.
Yeah. But she's like, fine, I mean, do that thing over there. And then we get suspicious music, and he's booping away at some panel. So something is obviously else being planned. But then we cut to the bridge, and like, there's like, oh, there's a person in engineering. Things have been rerouted. So Archer
Classic
goes,
LeVar Burton. We don't actually see it happening. We just hear about it afterwards.
Archer comes down to the launch bay to find Sim kind of leaned up against a shuttle pod, kind of pondering
having
and
already
waiting.
made the decision. We don't get to see that either.
Yeah, we get we did get a fun like Shuttle Pod 1 episode reference here.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
That was really
Although
good.
we also learned something else kind of interesting about the shuttle pods. They don't have toilets.
Speaking of Shuttle Pod 1,
They have had multiple, like, several day missions in these shuttle pods on this show, like, with multiple crew members on the shuttle pod. Is it just like a turn around while I shit in this bag kind of situation?
it has to be. Like, that's it, like, shit in the bag and shoot it into space, basically, right? Like,
they have
just
a
bring some cat kits.
microwave. They have a microwave on the thing. They couldn't put a suction, like, catheter in there? Like...
yeah, so so Sim says he's like, I was going, but then I realized, where would I go? I only have, X amount of days to live at this point.
yeah, I'm not sure what the goal of this scene was supposed to be. Like, oh, he's had some kind of emotional turnaround, but all of the dialogue is, I've realized that I'm stuck here and have nothing else I can do, so I guess I'll go through with it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little Stockholm syndrome-y.
Yeah. So Sim says he isn't scared of dying. He just can't imagine not being there tomorrow, which I thought was an interesting line.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
Don't disagree.
It is.
Yeah.
Should we insert the "Guess I'll Die" meme here?
Yeah. Yeah. So he.
Oh my god, that's a great meme. Fuck.
He eventually, in his talk on the shuttle pod bay, says, he finally decided not to go because of his sister, or Trip's sister. And said it was just as much his sister because it's in his memories. He wouldn't want something to happen to other people like it happened.
Also,
to
an
him.
interesting line.
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I thought there was definitely some very good lines in this conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like everything from this scene on is really good.
Yeah.
I disagree 100%, but we'll get there in just a second. But
Surprise face.
I think they threw a bunch of darts at the wall and like 2 lines stuck, but the rest of them were just shit.
So Sim is getting in some last pets with the goodest boy in Starfleet.
Porthos is the bestest emotional support dog.
When T'Pol comes in to say goodbye and gives him a nice little goodbye kiss.
This scene was stupid. This scene was stupid because again,
I
understand it. I understand it from Sim's perspective. She is a Vulcan. She is not emotional. She is not sentimental.
Devil's advocate here. There has been multiple episodes multiple times in previous episodes where somebody has pointed out how humans have been affecting T'Pol like the one Sarah, not Sarah.
Yeah, because she cracked a one-liner, not like she's
That's
emotional.
not just it.
So, like, the other thing too is, and multiple Vulcans, including T'Pol, I think, in this show, pointed out that Vulcans do have the full range of emotions.
Yes,
They
yes.
just repress them.
Yeah, they experience love. I mean, that's explored many times throughout Star Trek. So, I get what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from.
The
with
problem
it.
I have with this is mostly, not only is it a little sentimental and emotional for a Vulcan, but there's also a level of like, she is by definition a logical person, and logic says this isn't Trip, and that this person is someone that she doesn't even believe should be alive. So like, there's no logic in this moment. It's pure emotion, and that is antithetical to her character.
I don't think that she thinks that he shouldn't be alive.
Yeah, I don't agree there.
No, she
warned
disagreed
Archer
with
that
the original procedure.
Sure, but he's there now, and she's in.
No, I understand that. I understand that. She thinks that this is wrong too. I get that. My point is that like, this is an emotional bond that she is expressing between something that's only been alive for a few days. She has the logical capability to see past that, but she doesn't. This is very antithetical to her character.
I get what you're saying.
So I want to ask you a question.
No, I do like Star Trek. I promise.
No. What is the difference between this clone and the theoretical copy of someone who's just been transported?
That's a good question.
The difference is that the theoretical copy of someone who's just been transported doesn't have a lifespan in 2 weeks' time.
That's not good enough.
God damn it! Like, what the fuck?
Like, you can establish a bond with someone over the course of a couple of days, especially if they're working in close proximity with you.
Especially when you already have some type of relationship established with the person that's copy of, whether that's right or not.
I don't disagree that is possible.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that her character has the discipline to understand that is not appropriate. And that she should have done better. Even if she has feelings for Trip, she is managing to keep those under wraps through multiple days, weeks-long, like therapy sessions on like a daily basis with him.
You don't think she sees this as like maybe an opportunity to express those feelings to something that isn't going to be there and will not
remember it? If it was a human,
Yeah.
sure. A Vulcan, that's not how Vulcans are ever portrayed ever.
Disappointed. Matthew is very disappointed.
Yeah, apparently. Like,
I just need some consistency in the fucking writing. That's all I'm asking for.
So, like, this is consistent, though. Because the one thing we see time and time again with the Vulcans is that they are, like, undeniably human. And, like, they always, well, not always, but they almost always fail in some way to actually hold back their emotions. This isn't an inconsistency. This is purely consistent with all of the Vulcans we've seen in Star Trek.
Every time so Spock is an exception because he's half human and they use that excuse constantly. But every time a Vulcan has an emotional outburst, it's always blamed on some kind of biological or like psychological or psychokinetic whatever-ness. It's never just an emotional outburst.
I have a question.
Okay.
I didn't watch this scene, but is it possible that she kissed him because logically she knew she could provide him comfort?
I think that's fair.
I think that's her emotional
if that
response.
is, I will acknowledge that may have been what the writers were attempting to do, but the dialogue did not convey that.
Yeah, I don't. There wasn't actually a whole lot of dialogue around the kiss itself. To be honest with you, there was, her coming in to say goodbye to him, gives him the kiss. She's like, "Oh, that's the best send off I could have asked for." And that was pretty much it. We may be reading far too much into the scene now that I'm thinking about this.
Like, at the very least, this is way better than Kylo and Rey.
Yeah, that was also awful.
So anyway, after the kiss, we get Sin comes up to the sickbay for the procedure. He tells Fox he was a damn good father, except for all the parts
for
where he
making him call him doctor.
Yeah,
and gaslighting him and grooming him and tricking him into dying. But yeah, no, he's a good dad.
He's decided this is what his meant to do.
Oh God.
So
This is where I'm going to say
Look.
this. I'm going to say this. Look, this is where the writers were cowards. I wanted them to do a Tuvix. I wanted this kid to be like, "Don't kill me" until the very fucking last minute, because that would have been brave. That would have been a brave discussion of the topic.
I get what you're saying.
Make it hurt, man. Make it hurt.
I will say,
Dude, this did hurt.
it did hurt. And this is honestly, I think this hurt in a
That was
different way.
rolling my eyes too hard.
This was the first episode of Enterprise that I actually emotionally connected with in any way, shape, or form.
Stanford, you are
Wait.
heartless.
Wait.
You are heartless.
So
if you
this-
get moved
Y'all
by
didn't
this.
emotionally connect with the shuttle pod and them talking about T'Pol's bum?
So
No.
I think I tend to empathize with acts of self-sacrifice when I'm watching shows and stuff like that quite strongly, and so maybe that's the personal thing of mine.
And I do agree that is how it is presented in the media. What I'm taking, like, what I have an issue with is that is not how the actual situation was playing out. That is simply what this scene and its music and its dialogue was trying to portray, even though every moment up until now, it was not a self-sacrifice story. It was a grooming, gaslighting bullshit story.
I think they got there in the wrong way, for sure. Like,
But that's the story.
and
right?
they
like
even,
the getting there.
Showed his feelings on not wanting to die.
Like, nothing that's happening in this scene is consent.
And I think
there's no consent happening here.
I think because they showed that he did have feelings of not wanting to go through with the procedure in the first place, I think it did have more impact that he did.
He tried to get away, but then realized, well, I guess it wouldn't make any difference because he couldn't get anywhere. That's not coming around. That's being browbeaten. That's being tortured. That's being coerced.
I get what you're saying.
All right.
As
long as you get it.
Yeah, I do. And I made the same observations about how they were treating things. However, I think for whatever else they did in the episode, the ending scene did connect emotionally with me.
Same.
And I thought it was well done. So, meh.
Well, yeah, you're allowed to be wrong. That's fine. So was that is the last scene, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
'cause
Then
it
they cut back to the funeral for who.
That's right, the fucking
for
funeral,
Sim, who now is obviously it's Sim, not Trip, and he gets shot up into space.
Which was fine.
Yeah.
Like, the funeral part was
Totally
fine.
fine.
Like, yeah, he did a service for humanity, even though he did not ask to do so. He was bullied into it, but whatever.
Yep. So, all right. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 0 is threshold. Let's start with Rob.
You don't want to start with me?
No, I think we know where you're at on this episode already.
So, like I said, this started off weak. I wish that they had led with the whole, like, they realized that they were going to have to kill him thing earlier. I felt like it would have led to more tension. It would have been better if they just, I don't know, put more thought into it going into the final, like, moral dilemma. I really like the way that the episode wrapped up, though. It definitely built as time went on. Like Chris said, this is really the first episode where I felt emotionally moved. I'm giving this one a 4. Sorry, Stanford.
All right, Stanford.
It's all right. You're allowed to rate it whatever you want to. It doesn't affect my rating.
And go ahead.
So here's the thing. So, like, my issue again is that I think that the ethics of it were not actually discussed in a reasonable way. So, which is like, I'm not saying that, like, we needed a Jean-Luc Picard-esque courtroom scene where we, like, sit down and hammer it out to the audience so we actually know what's going on here. But the problem I'm having is that, like, the ethics were kind of the storyline, but also put on the back burner so we could do some scenes that were kind of not useful. I think that they had so much good material in here that they could have done better. Any kind of good discussion about him, like, actually struggling with understanding what his life is worth as compared to what his memories of Trip's life are worth. And like actually seeing that struggle in the character would have made this much better, even if the outcome was the same. I think the show would have been much stronger if the outcome was, I don't know. Archer tries to, on the one side, say he would never force anyone to do it, but then he's also forcing this kid to do it. That, you know, this it's supposed to be this wonderful self-sacrifice moment, and yet the kid says in dialogue that he realized he had nowhere else to go, so he might as well save Trip. Like every single moment that this episode had to actually discuss the ethics of what was going on, it didn't. And that's why I have trouble with it. And it's such a, I don't know, my own paladiness can't let like these non-consent issues just slide. I really fucking hate them. And so I have to give it a 1 because of that.
Oh, God.
If it weren't for the non-consent shit, if it was just bad, I would have given it a 2. But like, it wasn't well executed, in my opinion. The storyline was not useful for the ethical dilemma that they were trying to actually present. And then they just brought up a new ethical dilemma halfway through that they also didn't discuss. They just had Archer yelling at him. And then, like, at the end, there was not actually any consent. So I have to give it a 1.
Man, we're all over the place on this one. Okay. So, totally understand your perspective. See the merit in the things you're pointing out.
I accept your apology.
I enjoyed the episode. It's a 5 for me.
Oh.
This is the first, as I stated before, episode of Star Trek Enterprise that made me feel anything. So maybe it is because I have been so starved for media that will make me feel things while watching this show. But it impacted me. I thought the story was, with its problems overall, good. Yeah, it was a 5 for me.
That's very brave of you to say, Chris. We're proud of you.
All right. So, after we come back, since we didn't discuss the moral implications of of the actual problems in this episode, or at least the episode didn't, in our deep dive, I'm going to talk a little about cloning, and maybe we'll have a discussion on the moral implications of it. All right, welcome back, everybody. All right, so as I said before on the deep dive, I wanted to just take a quick peek on kind of what cloning is in the real world, and then kind of discuss a little bit about the implications, the moral implications that are involved with it, because there's a number of different things that come into it.
Some pretty substantial ones.
Yeah. So just as a quick overview of it, as far as cloning in the real world, there's kind of two kind of branches of modern cloning, which is reproductive cloning, using, material to basically inseminate an embryo, plant that in, a living organism, have it bring to term and give birth to that animal. And then there is, where is it? I'm lost it on my notes already. Therapeutic or research cloning, which is basically, when people talk about stem cells, they're cloning cells to get to a specific point, not past a certain point where they would be, implanted or anything like that, but to harvest stem cell matter. Reproductive cloning experiments were performed for many, many years. I mean, starting as early as 1901. It picked up pace in the 40s and 50s. At the beginning of it, there was basically scientists would take a single early stage 2-cell embryo and more or less manually divide it in two, and then let them grow into two identical embryos. Eventually, in the 1990s, what's that?
Did that work?
Not well.
Oh, okay. God, like that's I hadn't heard about that particular type of cloning, and it's clever, but I'm like, geez, that sounds like it would be very not successful.
They're very not successful yet.
Would you call it divisive?
Oh fuck.
I hate you. So in the 1990s, a process was kind of modernized and invented called SCNT cloning, which is short for somatic cell nuclear transplant or nuclear transfer. Which the process entails the removal of an entire nucleus from a somatic body cell of an organism, followed by the insertion of that nucleus into an egg cell that has its own nucleus removed. This is called enucleation. Once the somatic nucleus is inside the egg is stimulated with a mild electrical current, and then at that point it begins dividing. Thus, a cloned embryo is formed, an identical twin of the original organism is created.
And that's how we got Dolly?
That is how we got Dolly, exactly.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was a huge story in the news for a while.
Mm-hmm. So, human reproductive cloning is something that has remained universally condemned. Primarily for psychological, social, ethical reasons. However, another thing that goes in the process too, besides all of that, is cloned embryos that are intended for implantation in a womb are very unstable. There's been a number of experiments done. There was an experiment done in 2007 where they had like over 100 failed attempts to generate a cloned macaque. Macaque? I don't know how to say that word.
Macaque, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A viable pregnancy is not guaranteed. As a matter of fact, in complex organisms, there's something like 0.3% of them would reach adulthood.
Do you know?
That's
did your
wild.
research tell you why?
I did not get into the specifics of it, mostly because I'm sure it's very scientific, and I don't.
Oh,
I do
are you not a scientist, Chris? Are
I
you
do
not a
not
bioengineer?
have the understanding for that. No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not a biologist. Nope. All that being said, as I said before, there are a number of philosophical, ethical, religious reasons depending on who you are. But obviously, I think one of the main things about human cloning people would fear is going down the road of eugenics, right?
Right.
Getting to you always hear the term of designer babies, right? You can pick your how you look, your athletic prowess, your intelligence, whatever type of
Yeah, and that's genetic engineering stuff right there.
right.
Which I don't know, in my brain those are distinct. Like full on cloning versus like genetic tweaking feels different. I'm not saying that one is more ethically sound than the other, but I am saying those do feel like different categories because
well, and that's one thing too.
I mean, I am a person that existed, so I'm not sure how much eugenics that involves.
Right. When it comes to cloning, there are definitely different levels to it when it comes to the ethical issues, right? Because even with therapeutic and research cloning, there's a lot of people who don't think that should happen. Because it depends if what your views on the whether or not an embryo is a individual is it all or nothing.
Sure.
Were you gonna say something, Rob?
I was gonna say it's funny because I wrote a paper on this in my 9th grade biology course, and I remember writing it. I made the argument that designer babies are bad because essentially it's just a way for the rich and powerful to become more rich and powerful. But I am personally pro medical applications
Absolutely.
of taking DNA and growing replacement organs, replacement skin grafts, neurological grafts, whatever you need to make someone's life better or correct an injury.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, when it comes to therapeutic research cloning, that is kind of what those target, right? Those applications of those stem cells and using those to heal things that you might not otherwise be able to, or more effectively than you might otherwise be able to. There's been a number of laws and international conventions that attempt to uphold certain ethical principles and regulations concerning cloning. In 2005, the United Nations passed a non-binding declaration on human cloning that calls upon member states to adopt all measures necessary to prohibit all forms of human cloning, inasmuch as they are incompatible with human dignity and the protection of human life. Which is a pretty generic statement, if you ask me.
Yeah, I guess so. Are you gonna do more sciencey stuff, or are we full on ethics?
We're on ethics now, yeah.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about cloning, if I'm going to be honest.
Sure.
I don't like eugenics. That's for sure. And I guess I can see how cloning is sort of adjacent to eugenics. I'm not I guess I'm not. Well,
I think adjacent is understating. I think it's overlapping.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but not in an obvious way. I don't agree. It's not the same as being well. I guess I don't know, because there's there's difference between I'm going to genetically engineer my baby to be stronger, and the problem with eugenics isn't even so much the selective breeding, although that can be a problem. It's also the killing disabled babies and stuff. That's the real big no with eugenics, right?
Sure.
Where cloning doesn't do that kind of shit really, but it does. I don't know. It's weird because it's one of those things where it's the problem with cloning is that you are ridding the potential for something to have happened,
right,
without actually hurting that thing, Well,
and
because you're not hurting a baby and you're not taking any life away from anything by cloning, but what you are doing, and this is we can discuss the ethics of keeping the gene pool diverse and stuff. Absolutely, that's important. But in terms of an individual clone, that clone did not displace or remove or kill anything. All it did was take away the potential for another not life to exist, right?
I get what you're saying. I will say I don't know if that's 100% true. I'm not saying it's taking away from something else. However, to a certain degree, it's diminishing the individuality of a person, isn't it?
Right. And that's my problem with it. When you look at just think about baby names, right? Every year there's one name that's way more popular for a kid than any other name. And usually it's got something to do with media, right? For a while, Cersei was a really popular name in the United States. Imagine if all of a sudden 10% of all the newborns born in a year look identical to Cersei.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
Yep.
And that would definitely impact their life growing up.
At that point, though, you're discussing, I don't know. There's a difference between the ethics of the concept in general and the ethics of very specific applications of it. It is completely reasonable to think that cloning could exist such that you're allowed to clone yourself, but you're not allowed to clone other people you don't know. That seems like a reasonable restriction.
Even if it is just one person. I think there is something that is lost as far as the individual that is being cloned. Maybe that doesn't matter to some people, but I think, I don't know, we live such short lives. There's something about the thought that I was an individual. There will never be anybody else specifically like me. There's something to that say it's okay. Well, I did a thing a certain way. My individuality is as such that nobody can be the exact same person, and not even that a clone would be the exact same person. It just, I don't know, something tugs at my brain at that thought.
There's definitely going to be some rich person, some famous person from Hollywood that goes and copyrights their visage and then sells it to people so that they can make clones look like them.
Rob, rich people ruin everything. We all agree with that. That's not up for debate. AI theoretically has some good uses, but the rich people have ruined it. I understand that. Don't get me wrong on that. But my point is that
this isn't going to go well.
No. But that's not what I'm asking. I think, Chris, your point is actually very interesting to me because that is not. It's not something I understand. I'm not saying that in any way as a judgment. I find your idea that if you are a clone of a parent or a grandparent or whatever, that you feel like that takes away from your individuality, that is a fascinating perspective I never would have considered.
Yeah, I don't even know the best way to put it into words, to be honest with you. There's something about that it feels wrong.
Now let me ask you, does that, and I don't, this isn't a straw man or a gotcha, I'm genuinely curious.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that at all, like even a little tiny bit, if like people name their kids after themselves?
Honestly, yeah, I don't like that. I've never liked that. Like, I always thought that was like some type of like, for several reasons, like I think that's like a vain way to try to continue your life when you're no longer around. And I think that does take away from the individuality of that child that's being named after you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely, like, it's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah. So obviously that's not the only issue I think there's with cloning. It just viscerally, personally, that's something, as I was thinking about this whole topic, is something that I mulled over in my head.
Sure. And to Rob's point, I think that there is definitely a value to saying, like, whether or not in isolation there's an ethical issue with a certain technology like cloning, understanding that abuse is going to happen and the dangers of that abuse.
Yeah.
And like that is definitely part of that ethical discussion. I do agree that is an important thing to consider. Absolutely.
Yeah, like imagine getting taken to court because like somebody copyrighted their image and you didn't, have your genes manipulated in any way. You just happen to look like them. Like, it's just going to cause so many problems in society.
Yeah. So outside of just straight cloning, obviously the other side is the more research cloning, therapeutic cloning with embryonic stem cells. And I think most of the opposition to this comes from the more religious, theological side of things. Where you have kind of people declaring embryos as people. Which
it's an interesting discussion too, because and this is a discussion I've had with my grandmother, who is very religious. And it's one of those discussions where it's like, I am pro-choice. I will always be pro-choice, but to believe that that life, or a soul, or whatever you want to term it, starts at conception is an uncompromisable position. There is no middle ground between an abortion is murder and an abortion is not murder. There's no compromise there, right? So like these discussions are always kind of fraught with that, because like at the end of the day, you're not changing that person's mind, right? But it's a discussion about my grandmother, because she is obviously like very strongly pro-life and anti-abortion, and she believes very strongly that an embryo, as soon as a sperm enters an egg, that is a life right there, and that needs to be protected to the extent that is humanly possible. But then she had to pause when we explained to her that IVF is
this is actually something I was going to bring up.
A lot of embryos, and that's our child was born through IVF.
Not even just killing them. So in clinics across the world, you have hundreds of thousands of embryos just frozen, sitting. They're not doing anything. They're not being grown. They're not being destroyed. They're just sitting there. If we're to give embryos equal moral status as a person, how are we to say that is excusable and fine and totally normal, and then make this distinction that using it to heal people is different?
And there are there are people that don't. There are people who are absolutely against that. But it is interesting that there is always you find these people who have an allowance inside their own moral conviction that's well, an embryo dying is a tragedy, but except for IVF, because then we got to bring another life into the world.
Well,
it's
and
okay, you can't have it both ways.
There's the moral exercise, the ethical exercise. If a fire breaks out in a fertility clinic and you have to either save a 5-year-old girl or a tray of 10 embryos, would it be wrong to save the girl? Is the correct thing to do save 10 embryos?
Whoa.
This is a
Which
weird
one makes
trolley
the most
experiment.
money, though?
Like, if you're giving equal moral value to an embryo, you would have to save the 10 embryos, right?
Like, this is why I always thought it was weird that the compromise between the right and the left in this country on abortion was always the number of weeks into a pregnancy that it was okay to terminate a pregnancy.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's
not a good compromise.
It just comes from the fact that they tried to find something that they could measure, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Because and that is a very political, like, bureaucratic way to do it, is to find that measurement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, and Rob, you talked about, like, growing, and Chris, you mentioned as well, like, growing, like, from stem cells growing tissues and organs and whatnot. And, and theoretically we're getting close to that, although they keep saying that and it never seems to really happen. But, like, and this is where this episode's kind of ethical conundrum was trying to, like, exist, where it's like, well, it's okay to grow an organ. Is it okay to grow a whole clone with the intent to harvest? Even at first without the intent to kill them, but with an invasive procedure. And, like, with with dubious consent.
I was
like,
going to say that doesn't even get
okay?
into the consent of the issue, right? Because at that point, it's a person with their brain, with their own thoughts, and then you were like, "Hey, welcome to the wife. We've grown you.
Right.
Isn't that great that we brought you into this world? Hey, we just want to take a few things. You're going to be fine,
Right." But
we
that's the thing, like,
kind of own you,
right.
so
because, like, there are all types of there are any number of, like, immoral and unethical reasons to bring a child into the world.
Sure.
Things like, I only have daughters and I want a son to inherit my shit. Like, that's not an ethical reason to bring a child into the world.
and I think that's a perfect example of why cloning, one of the many issues that cloning has, because I mean,
absolutely.
even with natural birth, that has been
absolutely
shown itself in many countries where boys are favored over women, and they have, like, I was reading something like there's like a 30% difference in gender in places like India and China as far as men to women because of these practices.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
This was also a cool conversation. I don't know if either of you have either watched Star Wars Rebels or Clone Wars, but they talk about it with the clone troopers too, because they also have shortened lifespans.
Yeah.
And so, well, and here's the thing about the shortened lifespan thing, because, like, this is where this episode, this particular aspect, I don't necessarily blame the writers, because there's a level of psychology that we just don't understand. But, like, the argument was basically made like, hey, you're only going to live for another 5 days anyway.
It was so
fuck you.
Yeah, it was. I think it was certainly a moral ethics tool that the writers used.
Right.
Yeah.
But, like, it's funny that perspective was never given from Sim's perspective. It was always given from a human perspective, which is like, well, it's only 5 more days. What does it matter? But, like, to him, that's a third of his life. That would be like killing someone at, 50 years old.
Sure.
Well, I mean, they did sort of bring it up, and Sim mentioned it twice. Once was when he was trying to get Paul to go to a movie with them and said, like,
sure,
I might not be here when the mission's over.
Yeah, when he brought up the thing about the enzyme or whatever, right?
Right, and then later when he decided not to escape because he recognized that his life was going to be so short.
Right, I understand that he mentioned it, but I'm saying that we don't get an argument from his perspective.
I see what you're saying.
It's not just 5 days.
Right,
it is a third of my life.
30% of my life. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And I know that is something that science fiction likes to do, these, like, different lifespans. Fantasy does it too, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very difficult to do well, I would argue, because, like, we only have our one perspective, and the one thing that has been pretty consistent throughout human existence is like the longest we can really expect to live,
Right.
you know? So like we do not understand what it's like to live 1,000 years, a la The Exile. And we do not understand what it's like to have a lifespan of 15 days, a la Sim.
You should watch Free Ren.
That's
Should watch what?
Oh, it's the anime. It's that we both thoroughly enjoyed, and I think that's something that I'm like watching. That the beginning of that show in particular explores that topic quite a bit. I mean, sometimes as time, it's I think it's a theme throughout the show, but I think it hammers on that quite a bit at the very beginning of the show, and is done very well actually.
Yeah. She's an elf that has outlived most of the rest of her party of adventurers.
Yeah, it's very good. It's basically she's an elf, so she lives a very long lifespan compared to the humans, and she was in a party of humans who had basically destroyed the Sauron or whatever, the Devil Lord, Dark One, whatever you want to call it. And so they were famous throughout the land, and now it's X number of years later, her entire party mostly has pretty much died off, and she's looking at the experiences and things she learned from them and how they've impacted her life. So it's a very good show. Highly recommend it if you like anime.
Can you say the title again?
It's called
Free Ren.
Free Ren Beyond Journey's End.
Well, there it is then.
Yep. So, I think we had a good conversation on cloning there. Anything else to add before we hit to our next segment?
It's a much better conversation than the episode attempt. Bringing it back around. All right.
So salty.
All right. Well, when you come back,
By the way, a better resolution would have been for them to give him the enzyme and he's the new Trip. Fucking brilliant. No notes.
Are you going to say they should have Harry Kimmed him?
Yes, exactly. Like that's a genuinely interesting conundrum. Oh man, brilliant. No notes.
So what you're saying is Enterprise should have been Voyager.
What I'm saying is that Voyager was better. They could either Tuvix it or Harry Kim it. They had to pick one or the other, and they did neither. That was the fucking problem.
All right. Well, we come back.
Just wait until Tuvix is crying, begging for life, and you come back to me about this fucking episode.
Can I just say one thing? Before we before we head over to Potpourri? I read a very interesting little point that somebody made on a Reddit post about this episode. Well, not about this episode, but about Enterprise in toto. Enterprise is the only canon show that is canon for both the normal timeline and the Kelvin alternative timeline.
Huh.
That's weird to me.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but I suppose that's true.
We knew that. Yeah, because we talked about like what would because we said a while ago, like what would a prequel in the Kelvin timeline look like? Would it just be Enterprise?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Oh God. I'm good.
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back.
When we're back, Potpourri for Brown.
All right. So welcome back. For this week's Potpourri, I thought it might be fun. We had talked, I think it was back in episode 6, Impulse? No, episode 5, where I had gone through in the deep dive the writers and directors for that episode. I thought this would be a good time to go back and look at the writers for this whole season so far. Because one of the things I had mentioned was one of the writers was involved in the first 9 episodes of the season. And we've hit that now. So I'm just going to go through episode by episode and give the main writers that were written for each episode. First one was The Zindi, episode 1. Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. I didn't know that they wrote for the show. I thought they were just producers.
It's a shitastic duo right there.
One interesting thing I found out, one of the writers, it was actually the writer for this episode, Manny Kodo. This is the first time he's written an episode of Star Trek. Well, at least as a primary writer, and gotten the writing credits for the episode. he will go on to take over as the showrunner in season 4 from Berman and Braga, mainly because of how poorly the show was doing. Like the fans were basically revolting at this
I thought
point.
you were about to say mainly because of how poorly he wrote this episode. It's like, God damn.
No. Only you think that, remember?
No. Only I think that amongst the 3 people on this podcast.
Episode 2, Anomaly. This was a combination. It was Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong. I didn't realize that the 2 of these writers wind up working as a tag team in a ton of episodes of Enterprise. And they've got some of the big ones tied to them too, like Shadows of Pajem. They were the writers for Dead Stop, for The Catwalk. So some pretty iconic Enterprise episodes. There are 2 episodes later on that they actually solo write, but we'll get to that in a little bit. There's Extinction, everyone's favorite. This was Andre Bormanis, the only writing credit that he's got this season.
Good.
Previously...
Damn. Get the fuck out of here, Bormanis.
He's worked on Desert Crossing. He did The Communicator, where Reed, loses his communicator on a planet. They have to go back and take a look at it. The Crossing.
That's the one with like the wisps, right?
Yep, that's the Wisps. Okay. And Horizon, Travis's episode.
Oof.
Until that one, he had me at 3s, and then Horizon, I gave a 1 too because
Wait, you gave The Crossing a 3?
We all did, Rob.
Yeah, as I say, I think we all did.
We? Oh man, we need to amend that.
No, I believe it was. This is standard Star Trek schlock. Like,
yeah.
I guess so. I remember
you gave Desert Crossing a 4.
Who did?
Rob.
Okay.
Did I really?
But I give it a 3.
Yes,
Yeah.
you and I both gave it a 3. And then what was his other one? Not Catwalk. What'd you call it?
The Communicator.
Yeah.
The Communicator. We also all gave that one a 3, which actually that surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was like, I didn't feel like that one was that good, but
That's so weird.
back when we were young and stupid.
Yeah, right.
Now we're old and stupid.
Episode 4 was Rajin.
Yeah.
Another classic
Star Trek Baywatch. Yep.
Yep. That was Brent Friedman and Chris Black. So this is another duo that makes a cooperative appearance a couple of times this season. This was the writing debut for Brent. It looked like Chris was a regular staffer. Some of the credits that he received included Rogue Planet, Fallen Hero, Carbon Creek, and First Flight. So a bit of a mixed bag there.
Not for me.
No, you hate all of those.
I think no. What did you say? Fallen Hero. Fallen Hero I gave a 4. That one was pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising out of those 4 because like Fallen Hero is the only one out of those 4 that had like a nice tight narrative and like had one story to tell and told it pretty well.
Next up was Impulse. So this was kind of the reason we even looked at this evaluation back on that episode. Jonathan Fernandez. So
right, I remember
this was the only episode. Yeah, this is the only episode where he got full writing credits, like on the title screen and all. But he was involved in the writer's room for the first 12 episodes of this season. So we've got 2 more of his coming up.
Obviously, people did not take his advice very seriously because most of these episodes are not very good, but that one is fucking amazing.
Like, it's just wild. Like, that was such a good episode. I don't know why they didn't keep this guy around. Episode 6 is Exile. So this was Phyllis Strong. She was the one I said was usually paired with Mike Sussman. This was one of the maybe 2 or 3 exceptions in all of Enterprise. So again, she's responsible for a whole bunch of like the most pivotal episodes. Shadows of Pajem, Catwalk, also Regeneration was hers. Episode 7 is The Shipment. So this goes back to Chris Black and Brent Friedman again. This one was so much better than Rajin. Like, it's hard to believe that this pair wrote both of those episodes. This was the one with Coolbro Arboreals Indy.
Well, part of me wonders how much of Regine came down to direction as well, like in terms of its poor like shittiness. My problem is in like even in discussions like this is like I'm not actually 100% sure like a writer is going to write the story, but how much of the individual scenes are they writing? I don't actually know how a television writing process works.
Well, and one of the interesting things I found during this is it sounds like Berman had a lot of final say in what appeared and didn't appear on their show.
Right.
A lot of ideas were shot down by him.
Right, and so that's why I don't know, like if the primary writer on the episode was giving like the overall story and stuff, Regine's overall story was fine. Like it was fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't like anything to write home about, but it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the shipment story was okay as well, but it was like it was bolstered by some better direction and stuff, and how many belts that dude was wearing. Like, yeah,
So many belts. 3 belts? I forget how many
3 belts. Yeah.
True. I think also when you have like a guest actor, it's always a mixed bag, like who features prominently. Like if there's like another character that's outside of the normal bridge crew that features prominently at that, I think that definitely has a big impact. Like that actor who played, I forget whatever his name was, did a very good job and was believable and overall brought the level of the episode up too.
Yeah. I think my favorite guest actor so far is still it was the woman who played the Vulcan ambassador.
Yeah, pretty good.
Oh god, that was so good.
Fallen Hero. Yeah.
Yeah, Fallen Hero.
I mean, I always enjoy me some Shran, but you know,
I'm not sure that counts as a guest actor. Like he's
true. I mean,
he's a recurring character.
Yeah. Episode 8 was Twilight. So this was a solo Mike Sussman run this time. So again, that pair got 2 solos in this first run of season 3. Episode 9, Stanford's favorite, North Star. So,
I gave North Star a 4, man.
I know. That's why I said like I think it's your favorite of season 3 so far.
No, Impulse. I gave Impulse a 5.
Impulse.
It's the only 5 I've given out this whole show.
Yep. So this was David Goodman. He has written other episodes such as Precious Cargo and Judgment.
Ooh, that's some lowlights right there.
Wow.
Yeah, like this is one of those weird situations where like again, I don't know how you go from writing episodes like that to episodes like this. Like North Star was great. I really like North Star.
I gave Precious Cargo a 3. How did I rate Precious Cargo higher than both of you?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
It wasn't like it
Let's
wasn't
go back and
that
listen
good.
to that. Let's go back and listen to my reasoning on that, because that's...
As I recall, too, it's the Precious Cargo is something like the second lowest rated episode of Enterprise, like in general. We were looking at like the IMDb scores, for what that's worth.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair to this dude, like, Precious Cargo, what was the other one you said he wrote?
Judgment.
That's the so those are two. Those are 2 classic Star Trek storylines where like North Star was its Western, so maybe he's just not good at writing Star Trek. Like
maybe
that's funny. That's
yeah. And then episode 10, as I mentioned earlier, is Manny Koto, who is going to take over in season 4 here for Berman and Braga.
Oh boy.
I don't know. So yeah, overall, how are you guys feeling about the writing so far this season?
It's better than it in general as a season. I think it's been better than the previous 2.
Yeah, I agree. I'm having trouble with like, and again, I don't know how much of like I always call dialogue writing, but I don't know how much of that's like the primary writer or like the writer's room throwing dialogue scenes together and stuff. I don't know. I am genuinely uneducated in terms of how like TV writing works.
Probably depends on the show to a certain degree as well.
Sure, I'm sure that has a huge impact on it. But I guess like overall, the episodes have been more entertaining. They have been more interesting. The narratives have been tighter. I think that's usually good writing is when like the narratives of the episodes are good. My only issue really has been like the episodes where they try to, I don't know, where they try to like do these ethical things, but they don't do them well. Because I'm looking at like you got Extinction, Similitude, Twilight. I didn't care for at all. I thought that was just cheap. Regine doesn't have any ethics. That one's just Baywatch. Yeah, I don't know. Like, the problem is that, like, I'm like, yes, this season has been better, but also I've rated almost half of them less than 3. So, like, it's not a high bar.
Chris, how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I think in general it's been better than the previous 2 seasons. I think the episodes have been more entertaining in general. And this has also gotten the season has also gotten my only 5 of the show so far. So
yeah. I'm kind of the same mind. So far, this is definitely better than what we've gotten in either of the first 2 seasons. But like, I gotta agree with you, Stanford. Like, stuff like today's episode, as much as I liked it, I wish that they wouldn't try to rush these ethical dilemmas in such a short time frame. Like, give us a couple of weeks of Real Trip being in a coma and Sim, like, working in his shoes, so to speak. I feel like give us time to really digest what all is implied by this.
I mean, like, other Star Treks have done good bottle episodes of ethical conundrums before. I mean, just be better at it, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know.
Spend less time on foot 69ing.
Listen, that is a very important subplot to maintain. Like, and that's just it. That's been in for weeks now.
Yeah.
They've been doing this.
Right.
It's like a recurring thing. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for joining us for another week of Captain's Log Supplemental. As Chris brought up at the beginning of the podcast, please remember to like, rate us, comment. Stanford loves the comments now. It's going to be very interesting when we start reading some of the mean ones.
Oh, man.
And yeah, please recommend us to any friends that you might know that are also into Star Trek. That really helps get the word out and spreads us amongst the Star Wars fandom.
Star Wars
Star
fandom?
Wars. Star Trek.
I mean, there's
Oh my
probably
God.
some
Now we
overlap.
just
Talking about
lost-
clone troopers.
We just lost all of our listeners right there.
They're all gone. All right. Well, that's my fault. Anyway, have a nice week, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.